How did Michael know Carlo set up Sonny? He fingered Sonny for Barzini, and now Michael's come to collect. But watch how he does it. He doesn't ease into it. First thing out of his mouth is the accusation. And the novel adds something the film can't show you, what the other men in the room are thinking. Hagen and Lampone are standing there stunned. Not at the accusation, at the fact that Michael's bothering to drag a confession out of a man whose guilt is already proven. Why ask when you already know? Puzo gives you the answer, and it's the one human thing in the whole scene. Michael still isn't fully sure he's right. He's about to kill his own sister's husband. And somewhere under all that ice, he's afraid of being unjust. Carlo saying it out loud is the only thing that can erase that last fraction of a doubt. So he gets it out of him. And watch how. He sits Carlo down, has Neri pour him a wine, starts softening him up. Then the lifeline. He takes the ticket from Tom and puts it in Carlo's hand. It's a lie, but Carlo wants to live so badly he swallows it whole. Puzo describes it perfectly, the sweet, flooding relief of a man who suddenly thinks he's not going to die. And look at the question he asks next, because this is where it stops being an interrogation and becomes something more ruthless. He doesn't ask, "Did you do it?" Think about why. A yes or no gives Carlo a door. He can keep saying no, swear on his kids, drag it out all night. And we just heard him do exactly that. "I swear I'm innocent, Mike. I swear on the kids." So Michael never gives him that door. He asks, "Who approached you, Tattaglia or Barzini?" And just like that, the fight's over. Because there's no innocent answer to that question. Tattaglia's a confession. Barzini's a confession. The guilt is already baked into the words. Carlo can only pick which version of guilty he is. That's the whole trick. The name was never the point. What he's really after is the confession itself. And this is just the cleanest way to get to it. He frames the question so the second Carlo opens his mouth, the admission's already out. This is the kind of thing you might have heard a lawyer pull in court. It's called a loaded question, one where the assumption of guilt is hidden inside the question. So every possible answer just confirms what the asker already decided. Same bones as the old, "Have you stopped beating your wife?" There's no clean way out, because the question was never really asking. But it's also something bigger, a genuine law of power. This is Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards that you deal. The principle is simple and ruthless. You never give a man a real choice. You hand him two options that both end exactly where you want, and you let him feel like he's the one in control. Green's words. Put them on the horns of a dilemma, and they're gored wherever they turn. And Green names this exact version of it. He calls it the classic trial lawyer's trick, leading a man to choose between two answers that both sink him. Whatever he picks, he hurts himself. Tattaglia or Barzini, two roads, same car. Green even says the key is to strike fast. Don't give the victim time to think of a way out, which is exactly why Michael slips it in the second Carlo's relaxed and off his guard. But here's the part of Law 31 that makes it more than just a confession trick. Green's real point is about what comes after. If you openly crush a man, he fights back. He waits. He plots his revenge. But if you can make him feel like he chose his own fate, he goes quietly. Nobody to blame but himself. That's the genius of what Michael does. He doesn't just want Carlo to confess. He wants him to walk to that car on his own 2 feet, calm, relieved, thinking he'd cut a deal. That's exactly what happens.
Now, who approached you? Tattaglia or Barzini?
It was Barzini.
That's it. That's all he needed. There was a car waiting to take you to the airport. There was no airport. But here's where it gets darker, because the real question isn't how Michael knew, it's when. And the answer is that the family knew almost immediately, long before that confrontation. They'd known for years. Think about what happened in between. After Sonny's death, nobody froze Carlo out. They did the opposite, brought him onto the mall, gave him a house, handed him a real job in the family. And it goes further than that. At the family meeting, Michael looks Carlo dead in the eye and tells him,
"Carlo, you grew up in Nevada. When we make our move there, you're going to be my right-hand man."
His right-hand man. Michael is promising the number 2 spot to the man he's already decided to kill. Let everyone believe Carlo had been forgiven, that the whole thing was buried. Michael even stood Godfather to Carlo's son. Which brings us right back to that altar. You know, when I watch the scene, I can't help but wonder what was going through his head. What do you think was going through Michael's mind in that moment? He's looking down at his own nephew. He knows he's about to kill the baby's father in just a few hours. He's standing godfather to a child he's about to make fatherless, and his face doesn't move. The baptism isn't a moment of peace. It's the final move. Michael is playing the loving brother-in-law, while across town the men Carlo conspired with are being wiped out. and Carlo himself has hours left. It's the oldest trick there is, get the target to trust you completely, right up until the end. Connie says it herself, screaming at Michael once she puts it together. They couldn't move while Vito was alive. The old man would have never let his daughter be made a widow. So they waited, smiled, played family, and the whole time they were just waiting for the right moment to do what they had already been decided. Because Carlo signed his own death warrant the day he betrayed the Corleone family. Warning: only use the following strategies in an ethical and moral manner. Do not use this knowledge to manipulate, deceive, or harm others for selfish or malicious purposes. Being part of the culture Mafia is about honor and integrity. The strategies described are intended to help you navigate complex situations and give you the upper hand. Misuse of these tactics can lead to broken trust, damaged relationships, and significant negative consequences. Always consider the impact of your actions and strive to act with honor. Do me a favor, don't be a stunad. Take out that like and hit the subscribe button and drop Inner Circle in the comments. Let's hit 10,000 likes. Loyalty like that does not go unnoticed. Come on, before I gotta make some phone calls.
That's a silly message.
Number 1. Make them feel smart. Like you just saw in The Godfather, Michael showed his genius way of dealing with people who have big egos. It's all about making someone feel smarter and more in control than they really are, so they let their guard down. Here's Michael's simple guide of how he did it. Michael pretended to forgive Carlo and even gave him a better job in the family. Carlo thought he had fooled Michael and was now more important. He also did this when dealing with the other traitor Salvatore Tessio and the family's arch-rival Don Emilio Barzini. Why it works: when people feel smart and important, they stop being careful. Carlo felt safe and didn't see the trap coming. Number 2. Hide your real plans. What Michael did? Michael acted like he didn't know how Carlo helped to take out Sonny. He played dumb and let Barzini think he was winning. Why it works: when you hide how smart you are, the other person relaxes and makes mistakes. Carlo thought he was smarter than Michael, but he was wrong. Number 3. Use their overconfidence. What Michael did: Carlo's big ego made him believe he was untouchable. He admitted his role in Sonny's death, thinking that Michael would let it slide. Why it works: overconfident people get careless. Carlo's ego led him right into Michael's trap. Number 4. Get them to reveal themselves. What Michael did: by pretending to trust Carlo, Michael got him to confess everything.
Admit what you did. Don't be afraid, Carlo. Come on, you think I make my sister a widow? I'm godfather to your son, Carlo.
It was Barzini.
Why it works: when people think they're safe, they spill secrets. Carlo thought confessing would save him, but it sealed his fate. Now, this will depend on the context, but for the sake of simplicity, let's break down how you can effectively use these strategies in a scenario where you want to gain an advantage in a competitive environment, where you're under pressure by a highly egotistical and manipulative individual who is incredibly insecure. Someone who, if triggered, will make his sole aim to undermine your success and bolster their own position of power at any cost. Here's what to do. 1. Flatter and listen. What to do: make the person feel smart and important. Compliment their ideas and listen to them. Why it works: when people feel valued and respected, they're more likely to open up and trust you, allowing you to gather valuable insights and information. By showing genuine interest in their thoughts, you build a bond that makes them feel comfortable and appreciated. This can lead them to share more about their plans and strategies, giving you a clearer picture of their intentions. 2. Play dumb. What to do: hide how much you really know. Let them think they're in control. Why it works: by appearing less knowledgeable, you disarm their defenses and make them feel superior. This encourages them to share more freely, revealing their true intentions and vulnerabilities. When they believe they have the upper hand, they become less guarded and more likely to make careless remarks or decisions that you can exploit later. 3. Watch their ego. What to do: let their overconfidence work against them. They'll make mistakes and reveal their plans. Why it works: overconfident individuals often underestimate risks and overlook details, leading them to make errors in judgment or reveal sensitive information without realizing it. Their need to show off or boast can make them careless, providing you with critical insights into their weaknesses and future moves. This makes it easier to anticipate their actions and counter them effectively. There is one more, but if I'm being completely honest with you, it's too dangerous to have discussed this openly. After all, you never know if there's a Carlo lurking amongst us. I can only trust it with the culture mafia's inner circle. The people I know will not misuse the knowledge. But now, it's equally important to know how to counter this strategy. As you know, the world is not all sunshine and rainbows. Unfortunately, we're all bound to come across a few manipulative individuals who will use this law against you. I'll be sending you the antidote in our newsletter and channel members. Sign up now to not miss it. In the end, Michael Corleone's strategy came down to finding a clever way to handle people with big egos. By making them feel superior, you can control the situation without them realizing it. It's all about playing the long game and turning their ego into your advantage.
They dispute not in order to find or even to seek truth, but for victory and to appear the more learned and strenuous upholders of a contrary opinion. Such persons should be avoided by all who have not a good breastplate of patience. Giordano Bruno.
Arguing with people who have big egos is usually a waste of time because it rarely gets you anywhere. They always think that they're right and smarter than everyone else, so they won't listen to your arguments. Confronting them just makes them defensive and aggressive, escalating the situation. Don't feel the need to constantly prove your intelligence or superiority. I really like how Dale Carnegie put it. Listen to this. Avoid arguing with a fool, for he will drag you down to his level and then beat you with experience. Plus, arguing gives them a platform to show off and feel even more superior. It's better to let them think they're winning than to engage in a pointless fight. People with big egos can also be vindictive and hold grudges. Arguing with them might provoke retaliation or attempts to undermine you later. Avoid creating enemies out of such people. By not arguing, you stay in a position where you can subtly influence them. Agreeing with them, or at least not opposing them, keeps you in their good graces and lets you guide outcomes indirectly. Instead of arguing, learn from Michael. Make them feel smart and important to keep them calm and open to your influence. Hide your true thoughts and let them believe they're in control. Their overconfidence will lead them to make mistakes or reveal too much, giving you the upper hand without a direct confrontation. When they think they're winning, they'll share useful information, which you can use to your advantage later. Arguing with people who have big egos is counterproductive. Instead, use flattery, play dumb, and let their ego work against them. This approach avoids conflict and puts you in a position to subtly influence and outmaneuver them, just like Michael Corleone did with Carlo Rizzi. Avoid the toxic types. Let them think what they want to think and continue to thrive. Now, Michael used a handful of laws of power during his climb. Watch this to uncover how.